most of them are 1 bit at a time. None of them are parallel that I know of. So a dedicated connection, which we've been using in here, an example of that would be like a dedicated T1, and that's called synchronous serial. Synchronous means that the clocking is embedded within the signal. Asynchronous serial, an example of that is ISDN, is a circuit switch network, which means that we will dial up and get a different connection each time, and it's a dedicated connection as we're dialed up. And then there's packet switch, which is also synchronous serial. But you know what a packet switch network's like? A packet switch network's like do you remember when you were a kid, maybe some of you guys remember the party line? And you'd pick up the phone and your neighbors would be on the line, and you have to be a little older to remember this, but basically you pick it up and you'd say, hey, can you get off the line? And they'd say, yeah, because I got to make a call. And you know what that was based on? That was based on the fact that you weren't expected to spend a lot of time on the phone. And you know what? I had 2 older sisters, and as they got older, my dad had to put in a dedicated line because they started hogging up the line and the neighbors started getting upset. And so what happened is, as they reached their teenage years, they weren't using bursty traffic anymore. They were using constant traffic. So packet switch networking is used for bursty traffic that you're basically guaranteeing you're not going to transmit all the time constant. You're going to basically transmit bursty traffic, and you're going to share bandwidth, just like a party line. And if you can't do that, if you have to transmit constantly, then you're going to have to get a dedicated connection, not a packet switch connection. An example of packet switch would be frame relay. So in dedicated connections, which we're using here, we have a point-to-point connection that's constantly available. Now, it used to be that this used to be a problem because after 5 o'clock, and I don't know if you remember this, but it wasn't that many years ago, at 4 o'clock or so, you can bring the network down. I dare you to try to bring the network down anywhere these days and still live, and still be alive at 5 o'clock. That's probably not going to happen. People count on the network, and then they go home and dial in. So, I mean, I know I do that anyway, so I'm not being upset that anybody does that, but I'm just saying that the way that the WANs work these days is the network can't go down like it used to go down. I used to send out notices saying, hey, we're going to bring the servers down at 4 for service, and everybody go, okay, cool, and they'll go home or whatever. Man, you just cannot get away with that these days. The only time you can do it is like 10 p.m. on Christmas Day or something. You can bring your servers down. Anyways, dedicated connections used to be a problem because you're paying tariffs, even when you're not using the line. It's not such a big deal anymore because the lines are constantly being used almost 24 hours a day now. But again, if you have a customer, or if you are a customer that doesn't have a lot of connections, or in other words, you're sending bursty traffic, then and you're not doing it after 5, then a dedicated connection might not be for you. You could use something else like a dial-up and not pay tariffs, or packet switch network. In dedicated serial connections, we're going to use CSU, DSUs, and channel service unit, data service units, and these are going to convert it to the signaling from one side, and plus provide clocking for the routers, but convert it to the signaling that the switches use in the telephone switching, because they use a different type of signaling, and then convert it back to the switching that our routers will use. So our dedicated serial connections will look something like this. Now, in circuit switching connections, the circuit switching requires call setup and call teardown. It's a lot like a phone company. So this is only when we want to call up when we have something to communicate every once in a while. Now, Cisco says if you're only going to be 2 to 3 hours, again, a rule of thumb, 2 to 3 hours, then a circuit switching connection would be fine for you. If you're basically calling up over 3 hours a day, then you should probably get a dedicated connection or a shared line. Circuit switching is used in the telephone company networks and works like a telephone call. The asynchronous circuit switch connections dial up asynchronously. Connections are only made when traffic dictates a need. It takes a little bit longer to dial them up. ISDN has a fast dial-up. Now, we're still teaching ISDN in this course, and I think that that's fine. But notice that, or in your environment and probably in your neighborhood, you're hearing more about DSL. And DSL is coming around more and more, and I think that's going to replace ISDN in the future. Now, in circuit switched ISDN connections, we have 2 types, BRI and PRI. This stands for Basic Rate Interface and Primary Rate Interface. And in America, we call Primary Rate Interface AT1. And it's 24 DSOs, where BRI is 2 DSOs. A DSO stands for Digital Signal 0, and it's 64K. 64K BPS, kilobits per second. And a BRI uses different signaling than a PRI. And the PRI 24 DSOs in America, that's 1.544 megabits per second, is what you get. It's actually more than that because you only use 3 DSOs, and I'll talk about that more when we get to ISDN. Now, we have a DTE network here, and the idea is to take a DTE network and communicate to another DTE network across to a DCE network. and the DCE network is like the phone company or a leased line or someone else's network. You certainly can put in your own network here, but it's cheaper to take your DTE network, lease something that's already in place, and then transmit to another DTE network.